You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, on Twitter, @Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, Mr. Bob Harris, on Twitter, @FootballDiehard. Mr. Kyle Dvorchak, @Kyle Tweets here, no longer @Kyle the Kid. Gentlemen, it is August. Things are warming up. It's amazing. It just happens like this every year, and here we are. September's not far away. Week 1 is not far away. Full slate of preseason games Thursday. Mr. Harris, what is going on in Albuquerque, New Mexico this evening?
The fun has begun. The Football Diehards premium content has gone live. The August update is up and running. That includes the Football Diehards staff experts poll, which you guys are undoubtedly a part of, as well as me. All kinds of good picks in there. But in general, updated rankings constantly. The configurable cheat sheets up and running. The news updates are up and running. I think I put up over 100 today alone, just training camp blurbs. We'll have tons of article and contents and this podcast. So we got a lot going on there. Hit the order page if you haven't already. Use the promo code DIEHARDS to get a little discount there. You get all the digital magazines with that as well and see the fine work of Kyle Dvorchak, Justin Lonero, and even a little bit by myself, my own work in those fine publications, and tons of it on the website. So dial it on in, kids. And there's a lot going on. Look, Hard Knocks, we're recording this Tuesday night, the 6th of August. So Hard Knocks will be coming on shortly, and we're all dying to see what the deal is. So see if we can get a little nuance with Antonio Brown. If you hadn't heard, he has some issues with his feet, and there was a picture posted on the Twitter that looked like he had been walking on hot coals. Most of the hide from the bottom of his dogs was gone. And so, look, this seems like a significant issue. I know John Gruden has been a little worried about it. Our good friend Lisa Ann. So the word is that it happened in the cryo chamber, that maybe he didn't wear his booties. Our good friend Lisa Ann, you'll find her work in the experts poll on the site as well right now. She sent me a video. She's a big cryo fan, and she sent me the video with the full outfit and some taunting that she's sending Antonio Brown to remind him to gear up properly. But how worried are you, Justin, about, just a slow look, already going to a new team? Here we are having a little trouble in training camp. Not sure how long this will last. Any level of concern for you, or does this just seem like a minor issue? I'm sure you saw the picture of them dogs, right?
Yeah, it looked like quite a bit of corn that was just chipped apart. It did not look good. It was not appetizing at all. We're talking about Antonio Brown here, right, guys? I mean, he has been the best wide receiver in the NFL over the last 3-4 years. Downgrading quarterback situation. The fact of the matter is, this is a fantasy football show. You're getting him in round 3. We're getting him in the Scottish Bowl round 3. I mean, late round 2. So the juice is worth the squeeze. Am I concerned? A little bit. It's Oakland. Bad things happen there. There's going to be negative game scripts. But I think that just helps Antonio Brown from when he can stay healthy and not be a monumental headache for everybody else, because he's become a big one of those. But as far as like fantasy value, I love it. If it doesn't work out, no longer are you paying a Antonio Brown premium. So I'm fine with him round 3. I think he'll be just fine. He's going to want to show the world that he's still Antonio Brown. He's still the best wide receiver in the NFL, despite the quarterback downgrade.
I think we buried the lead there, Justin. Just let everyone know we're a fantasy show. I did not know that. I will focus more intently. I see Brown going basically in the late second round, 8th wide receiver. I think that's fair. Pretty fair roll of the dice given his historic production. But as you saw, if you've seen the clips from the Hard Knocks, his kids are asking him, "Where's Roethlisberger?" Kyle, is Derek Carr a worry for you?
Yeah, I don't. Derek Carr is a bit of a worry for me, but I do think this will be this could be the season he has the most targets in his career, because when you look around him, I do like Tyrell Williams as like a late sleeper, but that's just because he's kind of a guy with a bit of splash potential, and there's so much volume to go around. This is going to be the Antonio Brown show. I am curious to get your guys' thoughts. The amount of drama we've seen follow Antonio Brown on a successful team is incredible. Now imagine him on the Oakland Raiders, who I will read you off their schedule. After week 1, they get the Broncos. Then we get Chiefs. Then we get at Vikings. Then we get at Colts. Then we get they're listed as a home game right now, but it is Bears in London. Then they go to the Packers. Then they go to the Texans. Then they finally get to host the Lions. In that, I want to say it's an 8-game stretch. Did you guys hear any wins?
No. So I agree with you. This is like the big concern for me, right? Is when it all goes off the rails. I don't care how you slice and dice it. And I could I can paint a rosy picture I have before about Derek Carr, who has threw more touchdowns in his first 2 seasons than anyone ever, not named Dan Marino. That's a pretty good start to a career. Hasn't been as good of late. If things go off the rails early, who thinks Antonio Brown is not going to be a little bit of an issue? He is. And so that's going to be the question. Can John Gruden keep him in line, keep him happy? Will there be enough targets? All these things are the question marks. There's a lot of guys in that range at wide receiver that I like an awful lot. I have ended up not getting a lot of shares of Antonio Brown. Not really scared of him. It just hasn't fallen that way for me. But there may come a point where I'm kind of glad.
Yeah, I think for me, this is he's still Antonio Brown, and I do think when you're betting on the emotions of a player to turn out poorly, that's sort of a bet made on shaky ground, because really we don't know. Honestly, he could not care. He could have just hated Ben Roethlisberger. He loves football. You're sort of putting together pieces that might not even be there. So he's still at the end of my wide receiver, like elite wide receiver 1 tier. It's probably like about 8 receivers. But he's definitely at the end of that tier. So like you said, if there is anybody else ahead of him, for me it's been, a guy like Mike Evans. You're not getting Antonio Brown.
Right.
No.
So
it isn't. They did throw 133 times less in Oakland. That's substantial.
Right. Look, they're going to have to change the way they throw the ball, right? I mean, it was all short passes last year. It was Jalen Richard and Jared Cook. Yep. This year it's Tyrell Williams, who has a huge yards per catch average. Right. Antonio Brown, one of the most dangerous downfield players in the NFL. So yeah, they've got to change the paradigm is coming. Mm-hmm. The whole thing has got to change. We'll see about that. If we're talking about levels of panic, I'm pretty low when it comes to Ezekiel Elliott. I know there's, I always say this, the public portion of negotiations are the most contentious portion. And we've heard a little back and forth. Ezekiel Elliott has told the Cowboys he won't play without a new contract. He has not told them that, according to a later report. So a lot of this back and forth, he said, she said, is going to go on. Level of concern, Justin Lonero, for Ezekiel Elliott. Are you still drafting him as a top 4 running back?
No way. Not after what happened with Le'Veon Bell last year. I think it's just, I don't want to have to draft that early anyways. And you throw this into the equation. Right.
So let's just, on the Le'Veon Bell thing, let's just stipulate. Le'Veon Bell didn't have a contract.
That's true.
Le'Veon Bell was not a contract. Ezekiel Elliott's under contract for 2 years. Yep. Not playing this year means he sentences himself to 2 more years, right? So to another year beyond that, he doesn't get his accrued year. So I think that's a little weird. I feel like at that point, maybe if I'm drafting 4th and I would have taken Elliott there, maybe I pivot to Le'Veon Bell, right, and go with the workload. I mean, David Johnson's in that conversation. I'm going wide receivers when I get to 5 and 6 anyway. Yeah. So it really doesn't matter. And but if I get to 8, well, Kyle, if you're sitting there at 8 and all of a sudden Ezekiel Elliott's staring you in the eye, is there any reason you won't pull the trigger?
Yeah, I would put him at running back 5, and I would still take him 5 overall, because it's an important delineation to make with Zeke, Le'Veon Bell last year, and Melvin Gordon this year. It's Melvin Gordon needs to play 8 games to have, 5 accrued years or 4 accrued years?
No, he needs to show up by week 10.
That's it. Needs to show up by week 10. To get his accrued season and then be eligible to enter free agency.
Yes.
That just doesn't exist for Zeke. He's not even close to that point in his contract.
Right.
If he doesn't play this season, the contract is just, he moves into free agency 1 year later. And like you said, Le'Veon Bell was completely in a different area of his career to where he could just set out and then you hop into free agency.
Right. I mean, he threw away $14 million, but, feels like maybe got it back. So and I guess, I think we're all pretty comfortable with the note, except Justin, maybe not as comfortable. But certainly we're all more worried about Melvin Gordon for the reasons Kyle stated. It's pretty obvious that this seems to be a more contentious situation behind the scenes. More so, look, when Jerry Jones saying, when didn't I get a deal done? He said, when he gets a deal done, when he loses 2 games and says, damn it, where are you?
Yeah. Right.
So I can see the same thing happening. But the Chargers tend to be pretty much hardliners on these things. And look, they were without him 4 games. They won some big games last year without him, right? If you are a member of the Church of Yards Per Carry, it wasn't until last year that Melvin Gordon, jumped up to the front pew of that organization and became of more interest. Has it been that great that I need to burn draft capital on this guy when I can just wait around till later in a draft and grab Austin Eckler or take a late round flyer on Justin Jackson? Kyle, you.
Yeah, I'm not taking him. I think he was probably going, my guess would be like ADP of 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. I wouldn't take him till like the end of the second round because, like you said, there are guys. It's not like you're getting super. He doesn't have the Ezekiel Elliott upside in my mind. It's not even close to where Zeke could lead the league. He has led the league in rushing yards once, and he has led the league in rushing yards per game because he was setting out a few games, suspended a few games. So he's actually led the league in rushing yards per attempt twice. So he has that most touchdowns on the ground, most rushing yards on the ground, and now a reception upside that I feel if I don't get him in the top 5, I can't get a guy like him later. That is not the same for Melvin Gordon. I'm fine with passing on him until basically the 2-3 turn.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And right now, Melvin Gordon is going 212, so 13th running back overall. We'll maybe dig into this a little further. Justin Jackson, of any interest to you, Justin?
Not at all. Not at all. If there's going to be somebody, it's going to be Austin Eckler in the Danny Woodhead role. I think he's competent. I like his fantasy price. I think he's well capable of 60, 70 receptions, but I'm kind of staying.
I feel like Eckler has the standalone value either way, right? And maybe sure. Jackson is a late round flyer. If you're in many, many best balls like myself, you might have a share or 2 of him.
Right.
All right, so those are kind of some of the – look, there's going to be a ton of news unfolding. If you hit the website, you will see it all covered in great detail every single day. And we'll cover a lot of it here on the pod. We wanted to get into some of the guys that were, we've been drafting. I can't tell you how many drafts I've been in the last week alone. So we've been drafting a lot. And we've all kind of, started out maybe high on guys, maybe low on guys. Our positions are changing on guys. So we wanted to look at some of the players who maybe are falling out of favor or lesser favor with us, and some guys who are on the rise. So I'll start with you, Justin. Who's the player? Who's your top rising player? The player that's moving up your board the fastest?
It's probably going to be Tyler Boyd with the A.J. Green news. And Boyd was thrusted into a wide receiver 1 role. They're going to be down a lot of games. I mean, the Bengals are bad. And start digging around in A.J. Green's ankle. He's going to be out a few weeks. So I think he had a role. They threw some money at him this offseason. With A.J. Green in the equation, now he's the wide receiver 1 on a team that's going to be trailing a ton. I liked Boyd to begin with. I like him a lot more now. For certain. So I think that he can put up wide receiver 1 numbers, while A.J. Green is out. And I think he's a fine number 2 or 3 with A.J. Green in. He's built a rapport with Andy Dalton, and that was evident last season. So certainly Tyler Boyd tonight.
Kyle, who's your top riser?
Yeah, Tyler Boyd, no complaints with that one. He probably, especially when you look at the higher up in the draft, it's pretty obvious that he should be the number 1 riser. For me, if it's not him, it's Kerryon Johnson. With Theo Riddick being cut, I think Kerryon Johnson has the chance to be this year's Christian McCaffrey in that he's a running back who goes sometime in the second round, and by next season, I think we could see him as a top 5 pick. When you look at what this offense under Matt Patricia is going to do, they just want to run the ball, and now even when they throw the ball, it's going to be going to Kerryon Johnson. Last season, he actually caught a decent amount of passes playing in just 10 games, or maybe it's 12 games. I just don't see how he's not the every down, 3 down back, the bell cow you're always looking for, but you can get him in the 3rd round. And there's really nobody else like him in those rounds. I'm almost never taking running back in those rounds. He's my one exception. I think he's a guy that if you want to forecast who will be going in the 1st round next year, now I feel confident in saying that he's got the best chance in the guys that are in rounds 3 and 4.
Agree on both of those guys. The guy I'm looking at is I don't know if he's rising because he doesn't have to rise, but I'm getting more shares of him because he's not rising. That's Lamar Miller, especially with Deontay Foreman's release. We're talking about a guy that the running back 30. Get him in the 6th round. Who's going to usurp his carries? And the carries have been like for the last 3 years, 268, 238, 210. He can catch the ball reasonably well. They'd like to use him more as a receiver, 31, 36, 25 catches. He was held into pass protect a lot last year, and the offensive line issues may keep that again. But if they can get a little upgrade on the offensive line, talk to John McClain of the Houston Chronicle, and he mentioned they love using him in the slot, splitting him out wide. They think he's really great in that role. He's also a great pass protector, so that's a bit of an issue. But given that price and the anticipated workload for me, I can't get enough of him right now as my running back, 5, 4? Hey, I'll take it.
Yep, every time.
Yeah, definitely. So let's look at the other side of that coin. I'll go ahead and start this one off on my top guy who's falling right now. And it's another running back. It's Damian Williams, running back 12 right now. Missing time with a hamstring. Andy Reid is getting frustrated. Carlos Hyde is starting to excel. Look, I always advise people against looking down the drinking straw, meaning looking at the minute by minute. Look at the bigger picture. I do think it's fine drafting the role, the Kansas City running back role. Eric Bieniemy said today that he sounds a little more patient than Andy Reid. He thinks that they, just reaffirmed that Damian Williams is a starter, and I'll buy that. But given the price, there is a handful of guys going right after him. You look at him at running back 12. After him goes Kerryon Johnson, Aaron Jones, Leonard Fournette, Marlon Mack, Devonta Freeman, Josh Jacobs, all guys I love. I think I'm going to, and I have some shares of Damian Williams dating back to the preseason, so it's not like I can totally bail on him. But for right now, I am fading him fast. Kyle, who's your fade? Top fade.
Yeah, I love that one. I think volume could be an issue with Carlos Hyde taking some of that away. And Darwin Thompson, who they drafted late, is actually a really dynamic receiving threat. So I think he's an easy fade for me. And especially when you look at the history of guys who have played 5 years in the NFL and never topped 50 carries, the 6-year breakout for undrafted free agents on their second team is like non-existent. It's like one guy since dating back to the 70s. That's when you're not looking in the drinking straw. If you're zooming out, that's the type of profile you want to fade. So even though this news might be indicative of you saying, oh, well, we're looking at this one case through the drinking straw, if you zoom out, you're still making the right choice. My guy, for similar reasons of volume and basically not having done a ton in his NFL career, is Kenyon Drake. The Kalen Ballage hype is heating up, and I'm not particularly interested in Kalen Ballage, but for Kenyon Drake to be a productive fantasy back, or at least worthwhile, he needs to dominate the touches out of this backfield because they're not going to score a lot, and it's going to be hard for him to be efficient on a terrible Miami offense. So if he's getting all the carries, all of the targets out of the backfield, I'm 100% fine with that. Then I think he's a valuable fantasy asset. But even when you just ding his total touches out of the backfield a little bit from a guy like Kalen Ballage coming in and stealing those, then it becomes really easy to fade him. And more importantly, Kenyon Drake was a guy who made a ton of his money last year on receptions, especially, if you're playing in a PPR format. If you're like an adult, if you want to be a mature person, you're playing in a PPR format. Kenyon Drake was making so much of his money there. What's the one thing Kalen Ballage does well? He's a great receiving back, because when you look at him in, I believe he went to Arizona State, he was never really dominating their backfield touches, but he was a dynamic receiving threat. So if Kenyon Drake is going to be usurped in any way by Kalen Ballage, it is most likely that we see that in terms of receptions. So that's the one thing I love about Kenyon Drake. Now that might be in question. It's a full fade on Kenyon Drake for me, and I was interested in him early, so it's a shame now that I have to kind of pull off that.
Justin, your favorite fader?
He took my guy. You took my guy, Kyle. We talked about this the other day at length in a group text about the Drake situation. I have a ton of Kenyon Drake. Did a lot with underutilized last year in Miami, so I'm kind of laying off the gas pedal with him. I think Kyle brings up a lot of good points. It's a bad Miami team. We're playing eeny, meeny, miny, mo now with Kalen Ballage. So I think for me, it's AJ Green. Brought up Tyler Boyd. Like I've had it. You get to a certain point where AJ Green is AJ Green, gentlemen, but he can't stay on the field. He's a year older. You're going to get a slight discount on him, but I can't. I cannot do with AJ Green at this point in time. His ankle is screwed up. I think it was minimized. The damage had continued to escalate. So it's going to be AJ Green tonight. I'm staying away.
They cleaned out the ankle. He's expected to miss some games. We don't know how many, but it seems like multiple games is what they're saying right now. So I would agree with you. Although every time I dismiss him, he goes and scores 3 touchdowns in 8 minutes against Baltimore. So there's that. So Kyle, let's have your number 2 riser.
My number 2 riser, we have here, I actually was expecting a faller, but my number 2 riser is David Moore. If you're drafting super deep leagues, especially best ball, he might be my number 1 receiver in best ball right now, or number 1 owned receiver in best ball, because you can have him essentially at the end of your draft. He was a guy who was actually extremely productive in only his second year in the league last year. On just 52 targets, he actually had a great season at 445 yards. And 5 touchdowns. And with Russell Wilson, I think that 5 touchdowns is actually at least in the realm of repeatable, especially when you look at he could get a big target bump. Depending on what formation Seattle's been running, he has been running with the ones. In a 2 receiver set, it's been DK Metcalf. In 3 receiver sets, he joins them running with the ones. And I think DK Metcalf is a guy I'm full on fading because I'm not sure how well his skill set of being a great athlete and never really producing translates to the NFL. For me, I want age-adjusted production. I want guys who were 18 and putting up 1,200 yards. That's not DK Metcalf. He's a guy who I think at best will take some time to adjust to get his skill set to acclimate to the NFL. So if I don't like him, I have to like somebody, and it can't just be Tyler Lockett. And for me, David Moore fits that profile. So for that reason, I think David Moore is the ideal late round stash.
I'm with you on that one, kind of a late round. Besides, the dismissal. Will Dissly is back and doing work in the red zone and in the workouts, surprisingly. Justin, your number 2 on the rise player.
I think it's Emmanuel Sanders. He's off the pup. This is a guy, gentlemen. 12 games last year, 71 receptions, close to 900 yards, 4 touchdowns. 12 games, 70. I mean, those numbers would, if you extrapolated those numbers, you're talking about damn near 100 reception guy, give or take a few receptions. So we know what Emmanuel Sanders is. We also know that there's some young wide receiver talent in Cortland Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton. There's some young tight ends. There's a cloudy backfield. I am keen on Royce Freeman going forward. But as far as Emmanuel Sanders, we know what he is. We know his capabilities. If he's fully healthy and where you're getting him, which is nearly free, Emmanuel Sanders could lead this team in targets, and you're not paying what you used to have to pay, which was round 3 Emmanuel Sanders or round 4. It seemed like moons ago, but it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I like him at his current price as well. And I do think it's kind of gaining a little bit of confidence in there. My number 2 on the rise player, I like DJ Moore an awful lot this offseason. All of a sudden, I like Curtis Samuel. I like Curtis Samuel because he's cheaper, going off 9th round. But if you read the reports out of training camp, he's on point. Look, they expected him to be something when they drafted him in the 2nd round. They wanted to pair him up with Christian McCaffrey and have 2 super speedy threats. He runs 4.3 speed, clearly a great playmaker. The reports from training camp are he's turning into everything they expected him to be. Injuries have been an issue. He's got to stay healthy. But I think in an offense where there's a lot of powerful weapons there, not too many, right? But just enough to keep the attention from being focused on any one of them. I think it's a good position for him. I like Curtis Samuel a little bit. So that brings us to another falling player. Justin, go ahead.
It's tough, but I'm going to have to say that it's Ronald Jones. As much as I have as much Kenyon Drake as I do Ronald Jones. I think I'm just laying off the gas pedal at this point in time where it's unclear. These backfields, Peyton Barber's things are going to, I think that coaching staff in Tampa Bay is optimistic about Ronald Jones, but Peyton Barber is a good running back and he's not old. He's young. He's in his prime. So if Ronald Jones doesn't perform, or if he performed the way he did last year, he's going to be on a short leash. Now, will I like his value still? And I have a ton of exposure to him. I'm laying off the gas pedal because it's kind of cloudy. I know they want to get the ground game going. I know that they're eager to see Ronald Jones perform well, but I've had enough of them, and I'm now just going to sit and wait because of the cloudiness in that backfield.
So I'm going to go ahead and jump in with mine right here. Robbie Anderson is a guy that I've been buying heavily. I thought the price was great. It's not a bad price, right? 6'11". He's wide receiver 30. For a wide receiver 1 on a given team, that's pretty good for a young quarterback on the rise. But, you got Le'Veon Bell there. You have some other targets there. But most of all, as our good friend Mike Clay pointed out, man, he goes up against a series of coverages that would frighten anybody. Tre'Davious White, week 1, Denzel Ward, week 2, Stephen Gilmore, week 3, Ronald Darby, Jalen Mills after the bye, week 5, Byron Jones, week 6, Stephen Gilmore again, week 7. I mean, it's Jalen Ramsey, week 8. This is Xavier Howard, week 9. It doesn't get easier for him as it goes along. So I have a lot of shares of him. I like those shares of him, although I'm a little more nervous about him. But I'm not sure I need a whole lot more shares of him. Kyle, who's on your list?
Are we talking do not drafts here? Because I've got a good one for you. Phillip Lindsay. For me, I was already very hesitant on Phillip Lindsay. Even as they were saying, Royce Freeman plan to give Royce Freeman a more solidified role in this offense. They want a true committee going on. And it makes sense. Phillip Lindsay is tiny. Like he's like me, but muscular. Like way more muscular than
You are not muscular.
No,
I can confirm this.
Yes, you can confirm I am not. I am anything but it. But he is still a very low BMI guy. He's not muscular enough, essentially. He's 5'7", which I am, and he's 184 pounds. I am not. But that's only 21st percentile BMI. When you look at tiny guys, I'm looking for guys who are at least thick. I want a Maurice Jones-Drew, who weighed 208 pounds at that same height. Phillip Lindsay, 184 pounds. That is not the height-weight combination I want for my running backs. And they've got a guy who's much more bulky, much more durable, at least historically when you look at the size shape of running backs, in Royce Freeman. On top of that, one thing Phillip Lindsay did really well last year, caught 241 yards on 35 receptions. Great. You know what he's not going to do this year? That, because they signed Theo Riddick. I think he's in the ultimate touch squeeze of they've got a big bruising back in Royce Freeman who could potentially take away touchdowns. They've got a pass catching back. And they're doing things to act on the fact that it doesn't look like he's the typical guy to take on, 250 touches. I don't think his efficiency can stay where it was. I don't think his touches will stay where they were. Basically, everything is going off as red flags for Phillip Lindsay.
Weird metric that Mike Clay also brought up late last year is the yards after contact for Royce Freeman were phenomenal. Not so much, though, for Lindsay, who was benefiting from a great number of yards before contact. I think top 5 in the league in in that category, while Freeman was top 5 in the yards after contact. You wonder with Vic Fangio coming in if they aren't going to want to be a little more of a ball control offense. So I'm kind of with you on that one. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go with another guy that with our next faller, so we can end on a positive note with a guy on the rise. And I'm going to go with I'll start it out with, and it's one guy, but it's kind of two guys. It's the Ertz Kittle. And look, I mean, I like these guys. And I've been pretty much an early tight end drafter for the most part. But, as I've gone along, and some of this I listened to our good friend Rich Rebar talk about tight ends recently on JJ Zacharias' podcast. And he made some really good points. And if you're looking for regression, Ertz is in targets. Kittle's certainly in yards after catch, where he had more than anybody on the planet Earth last year. I'm still okay with Kelsey, but I think at the 307, 310, Ertz and Kittle respectively. I just wonder if I'm not better up looking for an upside guy later on in the draft and hammering the value at running back or wide receiver in that range. And that's kind of where I'm at. Justin, you.
Rashard Penny, you were at the draft when he was taken round 1, and everybody's jaw was on the ground. They kind of reached, and here we are. I think it's going to be, he's got that. Chris Carson has that Lamar Miller feel to the backfield. So I think there's been a lot of off-season hype about Rashard Penny. I think he's a special player, but taken too high for me. And as we near week 1, I think things start to come into fruition, and it's going to end up being Chris Carson, who's being overlooked and continue to be overlooked because Rashard Penny's been the sexier name. So I'm fading Rashard Penny. I loved him in college. But I think it's, we've seen this time and time again. The sexier names take precedence sometimes in the offseason. And then the stability, shows its face when it's time for week 1.
Right. We know who Pete Carroll loves. Kyle Dvorchak, that's a sexy name. Who's not sexy? Who's the least sexy of your
Also me.
followers?
The answer is also me. Oh, no, about football players. All right, Tevin Coleman. We talked about my muscle mass. I was like, I understand the answer is probably me. Tevin Coleman, not because there has been particularly bad news coming out of 49ers training camp, but because there has been good news coming out about Matt Breida. They've been lining him up all over the place. He was a guy who's incredibly successful last year, even though he was put in a number of bad circumstances, both with his health and with the offense he was working with. And I think when you look at Matt Breida, his success last year, and the fact that he already has rapport in this offense with Kyle Shanahan, I know Tevin Coleman was brought in, he's the Kyle Shanahan guy, but Matt Breida already has a successful track record in this offense, and I think, on a side note, the coaches must love the fact that he's always fighting through so many injuries. I'm sure it's great for his long-term health, but the coaches must love it, and I think Matt Breida, even if he isn't an every-week starter, is the guy I want in this backfield because of the cost, and that will be enough to knock down Tevin Coleman to where he's not worth what you have to pay for him.
Our friend Sigmund Bloom agrees with you 100% on that. Let's hope he doesn't bloom him. And so let's spin it back around, and everyone gets to end on a positive note. Kyle, I'll stick with you, young man. Who you like?
Yeah, it'd be easy to say Matt Breida right now, but I'm not going to go with that one. That would be too free. A guy I'm looking at, even though, ironically, I'm looking at, despite the news that has come out has been largely negative, is N'Keal Harry, because when you look at Julian Edelman dealing with a thumb fracture, he looks probable for week 1 maybe, but this is a 33-year-old player, I believe, who was using PEDs to come off an injury 2 years ago now, or is it last year? I don't know. Yeah, I guess it was a year ago now. He's a guy who's old, he's injured, I don't want to buy into that, so if I'm not buying into that, who do I think is going to get it? They don't have a tight end anymore. Josh Gordon is actually a guy who, if he comes back from his mystery suspension, I'd be interested in. But until that happens, I think N'Keal Harry, I don't really care about the training camp jitters, because he's also made some incredible plays in training camp. Every time you hear an update on him, it's either makes the greatest catch Tom Brady said, I love you like a son, or it's dropped 4 balls, got kicked off the team right away. Despite the emotional roller coaster, I just want to buy into the volume on a Tom Brady-led offense. It's not going to be the highest volume, but it'll be incredibly efficient. I don't know how healthy Julian Edelman's going to be, not only to start the year, but to make it through the entire year. They don't have Gronk. They don't have Josh Gordon for the time being. They lost Chris Hogan. These are an incredible amount of efficient targets that I want to buy into. N'Keal Harry's a cheap way to do that, and his price is going to keep going down. At worst, it stays where it is because of the bad training camp news, despite it being just like a few drops here and there. It's not, drops aren't predictive in the season. I'm sure drops are not indicative in the training camp heading to the season.
Yeah, he'll get caught up in the wash of the Jacoby Myers hype as well. Justin, who do you like in your final guy? Huh?
He better be. I was going to tell Kyle, he better be able to comprehend a playbook. It's an extensive playbook here in New England. So, and they have had some misfortune with rookie wide receivers. So I like Harry. I think he's the real deal. But like Bob just said, I'm hearing Jacoby Myers more and more and more. And, of course, James White's still there. So, but I do have some exposure to Harry.
And my guy, Sony Michel, catching the football as well. All right,
yeah.
Justin.
I'm sure him and Jordan Howard are both out there basically running deep posts.
Go, Justin. Who's your final guy?
Well, look, the Jacksonville Jaguars do not get a lot of national media hype. Those games are blacked out. But there's 2 Jaguars that I like, and I'm loving D.D. Westbrook. On tape, he's reminding me of Stephon Gilmore. He can play inside, play outside. Nick Foles is an upgrade there. I love where we're getting D.D. Westbrook. I want a lot of him where he's at. I think he can catch 70 passes, 900 yards, 6-8 touchdowns. Beautiful. He can be my wide receiver 4 all day long. But Leonard Fournette, I have gotten exposure to in round 4, late round 3, and I think that's a guy that it's going to be a bad offense. It's going to sputter. We know about his health issues. If Leonard Fournette plays 16 games and catches 50 balls, he's going to have volume. He could have volume like a Melvin Gordon or an Ezekiel Elliott. You're getting him round 3, round 4, and it wasn't that long ago, gentlemen. We were taking him at the tail end of round 1. So obviously a health issue, but we're aiming high here. We're getting the Leonard Fournette discount, and I think he's a special player. On a team that's going to need him to perform well if they're going to score any points.
Yeah, if all goes well for the Jaguars, and by all goes well, I mean that Leonard Fournette does not get injured, and they do the things they plan to do, he's going to be that 350-touch guy. I'm going to go with another guy that's going to lead to wide-ranging ridicule. Jordan Reed. I said Jordan Howard. Kyle, Jordan Reed.
Love it.
Right at 19. Get him in the 13th round. Talked to John Kine from ESPN.com today, and he's written about this, but talked to him a little bit to dig a little deeper. He just says, remember, this is the first time in 2 years Jordan Reed is not coming off surgery. He's quite a bit more explosive at this point than he has been. He thinks he looks as good as he did back when he was actually really good. But I think the thing that's more important to me is, look, you're rolling the dice, right? You're rolling the dice on a guy not getting hurt. We know that's unlikely to happen, but you're not paying for a guy that's going to be on the field the whole time. And if you look at the numbers last year, his production while he was on the field, his target share, his yards per catch, everything is pretty much on point with the high end of his career. I don't think that changes that much this year as long as he's on the field. And at that price tag, I'll have a fair amount of him.
Till he has a migraine or he gets hurt. But you're aiming for that Jordan Reed upside. I mean, it wasn't long ago where he was in the same scope as Gronk, and you went, wow, exactly. This kid is special. Let's be honest. It's a wishy-washy core of wide receivers there. They're going to be down a lot, and Jordan Reed could have an enormous year. He's just about free. I'm on about 10 teams.
Yeah, and if you want to go totally free, Tyler Eifert, but I won't get into that because I will just embarrass myself.
Love him.
And with that, guys, I think we've done a pretty good job of running through some stuff. We're going to bump this back up to every week, everybody, now that the preseason is here again. We've got the August update premium content rolling. You'll find work by myself, by Justin, by Kyle. You'll find this podcast. All kinds of great stuff coming to you over the course of the next month. And then, of course, once the season starts and we go into flash update mode, the regular season premium service, we'll all be contributing there as well. So hit the order page, use the promo code DieHards to get yourself a nice little discount. And any final thoughts from you, Justin?
I just appreciate you guys listening. And it's good to have you be back with you guys every week. Week 1 is around the corner. Things are warming up, and it'll be good to catch up every single week with you guys. And we'll be talking some DraftKings prices during the regular season. All fantasy goodness all around.
Yeah, exciting times. It feels like it's been years and years since the last season, and then once by week 2, I'll be like, well, all right, let's about wrap this NFL season up. Sick of it already. So, be thankful for what you have while you got it. It's been a great episode. I love talking about the training camp news because I think a few years ago I would have said it's all nonsense, but I do think there's some real edges you can be having to if you read the right tea leaves. So that's going to do it for myself at Kyle Tweets here, for Justin Lonero at Justin Lonero, and Bob at Football Diehard. Of course, you can check out the podcast is at Diehards Pod, I believe, Justin. And you'll get updates on the podcast from all of our feeds and the podcast feed. Make sure you subscribe, favorite us, LinkedIn, linked with us, all the things the kids are doing these days. Thanks for listening, everyone.